believe or know. When knowledge stops helping, remember this. When a human is born, they arrive already trusting. They don't know who will feed them, who will hold them, but they reach for the light, for breath, for life. That is the first form of faith. Without words, without proof. It's built into us, like breathing, like a heartbeat. Then we grow, and the world becomes more complicated. We learn pain, disappointment, loss, and somewhere between those blows, the child's faith begins to crack, like thin ice in spring. The familiar supports crumble. You know all the right words, all the right actions, yet somehow they no longer move you forward. Knowledge becomes a map where the roads simply end, and beyond it, a blank space. We spend years learning to name things, to trace causes and effects, to rely on statistics, experience, rules of others. It works as long as life follows known paths. But then begins the territory of the unpredictable. Illness, loss, a choice that breaks the old logic, a love that doesn't fit any pattern. And there, knowledge stops giving warmth. It's still true, but cold. You understand everything, but can't feel meaning anymore. And the heart refuses to live only by instructions. We often mistake knowledge for control. It seems, the more I know, the safer I'll be. But safety built on control leaves one question in the shadows. What if tomorrow everything changes, and life always answers, it will? Then, what holds us? Paradoxically, not the number of facts, but the ability to say yes to what doesn't yet fit into a clear formula. That yes is faith, not as belief in something, but as an inner agreement to live, to keep walking. Faith is not a weakness of the mind. It's the courage to remain in uncertainty without breaking the connection with yourself. It's the ability to be in between the question and the answer, between the past and the future, between what can be proven and what can only be felt. Notice, when you stand on the edge of the unknown, life grows quiet. Thoughts step back, and suddenly you can hear breathing. Most often, it's in that silence that direction appears, not as an instruction, but as a subtle vector. You don't know all the steps, but you clearly feel the first one, and when you take that first step, the world seems to lay the next stone beneath your feet. That's how the path reveals itself, a path impossible to see in advance. That's why faith is not the opposite of knowledge. It is its continuation, where knowledge temporarily ends. Without it, a person breaks at the point of the unknown, loses meaning, like a ship without a compass. Faith is not an answer to why. It's an inner yes, spoken to life, even when you don't understand what is happening. Faith versus expectation. It's important to see the difference. Faith is not expectation. Expectation is tied to an image in the mind. It must happen the way I want, otherwise it's wrong. Faith is something deeper. It says, whatever happens, I'll stay with myself and keep walking. It's not giving up the goal. It's giving up the illusion of full control over the path. Expectation gets disappointed quickly. It needs guarantees, assurances in advance. Faith, on the other hand, stays beside you when guarantees are impossible. It doesn't promise a comfortable ending, but gives you the strength to live the journey truthfully, deeply, without betraying yourself. Faith doesn't ask you to close your eyes. It invites you to open them wider, to see more. Patterns in coincidences, meaning in pauses, growth in loss. It doesn't say, this is good. It says, this belongs, and there is movement in it. When we lose faith, the world shatters into fragments. We stop seeing the connections between events. We start fearing, closing, controlling. Control is fear dressed as logic. It says, I must know. But faith says, I can walk, even if I don't know where the path will lead. A person without faith lives in constant anxiety because their mind seeks stability in what is always changing, but faith is an anchor in what is eternal, not in a religious sense, but in the deepest one, the inner knowing that everything that happens has meaning, even if you can't see it yet. The practice of 3 quiet questions. Sometimes all it takes is a small inner ritual to return to your center, not in the mind, but in the heart. When everything collapses or when uncertainty feels overwhelming, pause for a minute and ask yourself 3 quiet questions. 1. What in me is alive right now? Not what do I think, but what do I feel? Fear, sadness, hope, curiosity, fatigue. Name it gently, without judgment. Naming brings you back to the living reality within. 2. What asks for my small step today? Not a grand plan, but one simple act that matches the truth of this moment. To write a message, to go outside, to call someone, to stay silent. Small, but from within. 3. What am I willing to trust? Not the vague, the universe will help, but something real. The process, the rhythm of life, your own experience, the people near you. Trust is the bridge between I don't know and I'm moving forward. When these questions become a habit, faith stops being an idea. It becomes a quality of movement. Sometimes faith is silent. It doesn't promise that everything will be easy. It simply stays beside you. Faith is not a light that removes the darkness. It is the presence that doesn't leave. Even when everything around is dark, it is not an explanation, but the breath of meaning, the thing that holds you when nothing else does. When you believe, you don't stop doubting. You simply choose to walk forward despite the doubt. Faith doesn't ask for certainty. It asks for sincerity. The place of faith in life. Faith is the inner architecture of meaning. It holds us when plans collapse. It continues the journey when all maps end. It weaves scattered facts into a story, one where you are not an accident, but a participant. Knowledge answers the question, how? Faith answers the question, why? And when these two forces meet, a person stops living by inertia and begins to live consciously. They become someone who can keep walking, even if, in the darkness, only one step is visible. And perhaps in that very moment, the most important knowledge is born. The kind that cannot be read in books, knowledge felt by the heart, where faith does not argue with reason, but gives it direction. And maybe faith is a form of love, one that requires no proof. Love for life, for the path, for something greater than ourselves. When a person lives without faith, they keep waiting for confirmation from the outside. When they live with faith, they become a source of light themselves. And that perhaps is the most important thing. Faith is not out there, not in temples, not in books, not in traditions. It lives inside the human being, in that place where we feel, not explain, where we trust, not control, where we walk, even without seeing the end of the road. And in the moment when you stop fighting what you cannot understand and simply breathe, faith returns, not as religion, but as clarity, not as a word, but as a state of being, because faith is the light that keeps burning, even when you've been walking in the dark for a long time.